hidden truths, challenges, and challenge conventional thinking, and dive deep into the mysteries that shape our world. I'm your host, Tony Sweet, and today we're tackling one of the most urgent and alarming issues of our time, the Sixth Mass Extinction, and are we running out of time? Joining me is one of the world's leading voices in ecology and conservation, Dr. Gerardo Ceballos. He's a renowned zoologist whose groundbreaking research has sounded the alarm on the accelerating loss of biodiversity and the consequences we face if we don't act now. In this episode, we'll explore what exactly is the Sixth Mass Extinction, why are species disappearing at such an unprecedented rate, and is human activity driving this crisis, and what can still be done. This conversation isn't just for scientists or policymakers, it's for all of us, because the fate of countless species, ecosystems, and even humanity itself is on the line. Because you might hear something today that will change your mind and the world. I'm your host, Tony Sweet, and please welcome to the Truth Be Told studios for the first time, Dr. Gerardo Ceballos. Hello, hello. Well, welcome to Truth Be Told. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tony.
Did I get your last name even close?
It's close. It's Ceballos. You say Ceballos, but yes, Ceballos. That's perfect.
That's my country roots of trying to pronounce a Latino name. So
I'll do the same when I pronounce the English foreign last name. So
at least I didn't use the L's. Well, I appreciate you being here, and I know this is a topic that a lot of people have been talking about for a while, and I'm just going to dive right in. And you've been, on the forefront of really sounding the alarm of what you and many scientists now are calling the Sixth Mass Extinction. And when did you realize that we are facing a crisis of this magnitude? And what was the moment like for you as a scientist and just as a human being?
Well, I have been interested in conservation and ecology for a long, long time. My parents said since I was a very young kid, I would say that I wanted to study animals. When I was around 14, I got a book, a novel, was The Last Eskimo Corleo, and it was a novel that talks about the last two Eskimo Corleos flying in the planet. One died, and then the male stay alone for all his life trying to find a mate. And when I read that, I got of anxiety about going out of my neighborhood to another town, to another place, and I find another human being. And so I started to study biology. And since I was studying biology, we knew there was a problem with extinction in the sense that many species were becoming extinct or locally extinct. But nobody knew what was the urgency of the problem.
Right.
And actually, many of my friends would say that many of the times say, well, don't worry, Gerardo. Extinction is part of evolution. Evolution is basically the relationship between extinction and speciation. Mm-hmm. In normal times, speciation is higher than extinction, so there are more species to be added. So it was in around 2008 when I was after doing a sabbatical at Stanford with my very good colleague Paul Ehrlich, that we start to discuss that. And one day I said, what about the magnitude of extinction? This is normal or not? And the problem that we have is that to be able to answer that question, you have to know what was the normal rates of extinction in the previous million years, And there was not that information. But anyway, we gathered what other people have said and something, and we published a first paper in 2010, in a very small journal, just to start with. And then we keep on working.
Right.
And then we got a really nice data from Tony Barnowski from Berkeley, a colleague of us, who published in 2011 this paper on that we have estimated the rate of extinction of mammals in the last few million years. So it was like bingo, we have a golden thing here. So at that time, what we did, we talked to him and then all the other colleagues, and I gathered the data for all the vertebrates that had become extinct in the last 500 years, since 1500. And to be honest, I knew, I mean, I have a big expectation that what we will find, it was that the current extinction will be higher than the extinction patterns in the last few million years. And we did a study, and so the surprise was that it was much, much higher than we even expected,
Right.
I was very surprised on the one hand. We reviewed the analysis several times. We even sent the analysis to some of our friends to say, please check it if we're not doing something wrong. And Tony Barnowski was part of our team. So at the end, the data was correct. And on the one hand, so we decided to publish it, and we put a very, a very dramatic title. And I remember that the journal said, well, the paper has been accepted, but we don't like this kind of title because we are scientists. And we said, well, come on, guys. We are scientists. And as a scientist, we have to be careful not to say things that are not based on data.
Right.
But on the other hand, will be unethical not to say the magnitude of the problem. So they let us to have our title. And the title basically say that we have entered the Sixth Mass Extinction. And boom, it was amazing. It was immediately took off in the news, in the radio, in the newspapers, TV, social media. It was really very impressive how many people, how many outlets become interested on the problem. So for once, it was very important then to realize that people were concerned about this problem. We all had been concerned by that time, and most of the people knew about climate change. But very few people understand at that time that the extinction crisis was as bad as a climate crisis, with a difference. If we let the planet to cool off for a few hundreds of millions or thousands of years, we will recover. If we lose all these species, they will never be again here. So you asked me, how did I feel? I felt incredibly, on the one hand, it's very difficult that one scientist, as you as a scientist, managed to find out something that changed the paradigm. Like in this case, that we said, this is not normal. We have to be very worried about it. And so in that sense, it was like rewarding that we were able to put together very strong data set and analysis, and to be able to show that we have entered mass extinction. We're in a crisis at such magnitude that could compare to the previous 5 mass extinction. On the other hand, I felt like incredibly sad because just imagine suddenly you think that, and you realize that the extinction problem is, there is a bad extinction problem, that the extinction crisis is bad, but suddenly you realize that it's much worse than you ever imagined. And at that time, let me tell you something. For me, every time I will get in the internet, an email saying, dear Dr. Ceballos, regarding your paper, I was jumping because, we were, they were literally, everybody was on top of trying to figure out if we were right or wrong. And on the one hand, I said, I really hope that somebody shows that we're wrong. In terms, as a scientific career, it will be like a bump in your scientific career. But in terms of the importance and the relevance for humanity, for biodiversity, it would have been wonderful to be proven wrong. But unfortunately, it wasn't that case. And after all, there were many other people starting to do. There were two criticisms. One, that we were just starting and we couldn't know that this was a mass extinction until the end of it. And the second is that we use the extinction rate for mammals, but that's probably they didn't apply to other organisms in the planet. In the following 5 years, we published this in 2015. There were papers on microbes, on fungi, on all kinds of invertebrates, on other vertebrates and plants, everything. All of them show the same patterns. And even some of them even much worse. For instance, in land snails, the current extinction crisis, the current extinction, the animals that become extinct in the last 100 years would have taken 80,000 years or more. In our paper, and we use we were like trying to use the most conservative data.
Right.
And with the most conservative data, we show that the species that have become extinct in 100 years would have taken at least 10,000 years to become extinct.
Wow.
That was the magnitude, that was the big finding of the paper.
Well, I have a couple things there. I mean, first of all, you study for 500 years of extinction. So there, you made kind of the term extinction versus the other one. I can't remember what you said, but it's like the buffalo. When the white man came to America and the Indians, we pretty much almost wiped out the buffalo, American buffalo.
Yeah.
That was over hunting. What was the data from the last 500 years versus over hunting versus environmental? It sounds like the last 100 years have been more the environment changing versus over hunting. Am I correct?
This is exactly why it was important. If this was caused by natural causes, like environmental causes, not related to humans, then the extinction rate, the current extinction rate will have to be similar to the extinction rate in the previous million years, where there were no humans here. That's exactly what was important about this paper, that we have 500 years, and we use 500 years because the International Union for Conservation of Nature start to count. This is the official body that counts extinct and endangered species in the planet. And they start in 1500 because the first written account of a species to become extinct was at the end of 1500. But just imagine, this is so on the one hand, this is what was so important because we could prove that if the current extinction rates were similar to what happened in the last previous million years, it will be obviously natural causes. So we shouldn't worry because we could do nothing. We could do a few things to stop it, but it will be natural. It will be a natural path.
Right.
The same thing that has happened in the last few million years. But if we look at that and then compare to what happened when we humans, started to have a big impact, then it is basically, this is what the big issue, the big point of the paper is showing that the massive extinction rates that has started since 1500 related to human activity, to when the presence of humans and activities start to become impacted the global at the global level, that was the critical issue. So we could say with certainty that these extinctions were not caused by natural causes, like the natural changes in climate or other things, but they were related to the presence of human and its activities. And that's the critical point, and I'm glad you pointed. So for the people who are not scientists, so if we compare what happened in the previous million years, there were no humans, and basically, for the last 66 million years, there has been extinction rates who are lower than speciation rates. So the number of species has increased. And this suddenly the humans appear, and we start to count the species that become extinct, and then we compare to what happened in the previous million years, and found that indeed it's because of the human activities. And you say discounting, what are the human activities? Basically, there are so many things. But we scientists, we call like the ultimate causes of extinction are caused by the human population growth. We're too many, and we're growing too fast, We're passing the carrying capacity of the planet of having too many humans. Right. The second thing is our consumption. We use too much things, especially societies and people who are more affluent use too many resources. And finally, technologies, Our technologies, for instance, oil is very good at producing energy for us, but it's bad because it produces gases that
Right.
warm the atmosphere. So those are the ultimate causes. And then the proximate causes is the causes directly related to these human activities. What they are? First is the habitat destruction and fragmentation. We have destroyed more than 50% of all the natural habitats that were here present 500, 800 years ago. Forests, mangroves, tropical forests, all are gone. Corals, they are gone. So one of the main causes is habitat destruction and habitat fragmentation. And why this has increased? Because the more humans there are, the more land we need for infrastructure, including cities and towns and so, and for agriculture and for cattle grazing, that basically producing food and producing habitat for us. So this is the first cause. Then the second cause will be, as you said, overexploitation. You know, we have wiped out, as you say, the buffalo. There were an estimated between 30 to 60 million buffaloes. And in 200 years, they were gone.
Yeah.
The species almost become extinct. And because of Yellowstone, it was saved. But I mean, right now, there are probably no more than 10,000 wild buffaloes in the planet. And then, so it's over hunting and over killing. But then, for instance, there are only 2% of the big fishes in the oceans that were in 1970, including sharks, for instance, and tuna fish. Only 2% of what used to be in the 1970s are still around.
Right. Wow.
So the massive, and then the third cause is illegal trade. We are using literally billions of species to fuel the pet trade in the US, in Europe, in Asia, and in Mexico too, obviously. And then also, for instance, some gigantic trade for animals and their parts because they're supposed to have a medicinal properties,
Right.
like the horn of the rhino, you know? I mean, you
Yeah.
know that it's been killed because it is being used for as a aphrodisiac or for many other things. China, Vietnam, and Indonesia are the main problems right now on using products. I mean, literally, species are becoming extinct because of the trade of a few countries. And but those few countries are the ones who are getting the animals, but those animals are being killed by many other countries, you know. In Mexico, the vaquita, there's a small dolphin-like mammal. It's the
yeah.
most endangered marine mammal in the planet.
Yeah.
It's becoming extinct because the people in the Gulf of Mexico, in Mexico, use this net to fish the totuaba. It's a fish that for some really nonsense reasons, the gallbladder, you know, is sold incredibly expensive in China. And then they put, I mean, right now, there are 2,000 boats fishing in the Gulf. And then there are less than 10 vaquitas. And there has been a big effort of the Mexican government to try to deal with the issue. And the good news is there are still around 10, you know. But the problem is they go from here, go through the United States, and then from the United States to China.
Right.
The price in Mexico will be probably $400, I mean, $4,000 per kilo. And once they reach China, it will be hundreds of thousands of dollars. Pangolin scales. The pangolin, one of them, I have been many times in the tropical forests of Asia and Africa, many times. And I have seen only one, a pangolin in the wild. And we have seen very often that, for instance, the authorities in Indonesia or in Thailand confiscated shipment of 30 tons of scales of pangolins. Pangolins are mammals who are covered with scales like fingernails, you know, the whole body. Just imagine how many pangolins you have to kill to have 30 tons of. So, and then we have diseases, you know, introduced diseases by animals, by domestic animals, or new diseases, emerging diseases like COVID or like influenza, avian influenza, and so on. And all these factors, just imagine, all these factors are affecting the wild species. On the one hand, you have lose 50% of your land or more of your habitat, So your habitat has been destroyed. Many of your of the other individuals of your same species are being killed for whatever reason, And then you are exposed to diseases. You're exposed to pollution. You're exposed now. I mean, this has happened in the absence of climate change. But now, just imagine that on top of all of this, you are putting climate change. So the situation is very, very difficult. We did another analysis and where we evaluate 33,000 species from very abundant species to very rare species. And there was data on what was the population trend, stable, declining, increasing, and almost 40% of all those species, including very, very abundant, less abundant, rare, very rare, critically endangered, 40% at least have declining population. And then a more recent paper shows that is almost 60% of them have declining populations. So the panorama, it shows that we're losing so many plants, so many animals, so many microorganisms, wild plants, wild animals, wild microorganisms in the planet that is reaching, it's already a very catastrophic issue. And I will explain why in a minute.
Well, let's go touch on what you're talking about, because I think if the species were such as our pets and things that we see constantly, cats, dogs, cows, sheep, they were declining, we would probably do something about it faster. But unfortunately, you're talking about the snails and things in the forest and, things that we don't even think about, bees that we don't see that often. So I think that's one reason why people are not as concerned, because it's like, well, I don't really see them that often. So that being said, what are some of the species or groups that are disappearing fastest that maybe we're not really aware of that are really important to our ecosystem?
Well, first of all, I mean, the very large animals that we like and we know, most of the people know: elephants, giraffes, rhinos, hippopotamus, tigers, lions, jaguars, tapirs. I could keep on going for hours.
Right.
All of them are the same. But then published a book recently. It's called Before They Vanish. Where we literally look out at different groups, including microbes. And basically, we're losing microbes, we're losing fungi, we're losing plants. And some of the most obscure species, evidently, will be all of those species who are very cryptic. They are not very conspicuous, that most of the live in places like a forest, far away from most of us live, And we know a lot of how many species or what species are being disappearing, because fortunately we have now the access to almost instantaneous access to knowledge, to news, and then the social media has really helped to publicize the problem. But let me tell you something. Many times people ask me a question similar to what you just mentioned. They say, Gerardo, well, it's too sad that all these species are disappearing, it's sad.
I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
Yeah. Or they say, well, but it's so sad, but this is the cost of development. It's the cost of human well-being, in order to have this. And I wish they were right. I mean, there are so many reasons we should care about nature, about wild plants, wild animals, wild microorganisms, wildlife in general. But there are religious, philosophical, moral, ethical. You can say so many reasons. If we were very selfish and we just think about humans, the most important reason to save this species is because there is life on this planet, just because those species exist. If you think about it, there are more plants, galaxies in the universe than grains of sand
Oh, yeah.
in the ocean. Just imagine, there are more. You just pull some sand in your hand, and there are thousands and thousands of grains. Well, more than that, galaxies and planets in the universe,
Right.
And as far as we know, there is only life on this planet. And there is only life on this planet because of the wild plants, animals, and microorganisms. Those animals, those plants, those microbes are organized in what we scientists call ecosystems that are basically ecological systems that are incredibly complex. Just imagine a tropical forest in southern Mexico where I work. There must be 70,000 or more species living together.
Wow.
Can you simply start to describe what are the interactions of 70,000 things? Impossible. Well, this is what we're destroying. And by working together and by forming those ecosystems, basically those ecosystems provide what we call, the scientists call, ecosystem services. Ecosystem goods and services are all the benefits that we humans get for free for the well-functioning of nature. So, for instance, just to give the proper combination of gases of the atmosphere that make an atmosphere suitable for life in general and for human life in particular is because of the plants and animals in this planet. All the drinking water for us and for all the animals is produced by the cycles that rely on the function of these ecosystems. All the soils in the planet that are natural soils are basically fertilized by these cycles. So another thing, around 75% of all the active compounds of the drugs that we use right now, of the medicines, come from plants and animals, wild plants and animals. So one of the most important drugs against diabetes, right now, the active compound comes from a lizard in Mexico that is also found in the US. It's called the Gila monster, or the bearded lizard, who has is poisonous. It's one of the rarest lizards that is poisonous. And they found a protein in their venom that is incredibly important to fight diabetes. And the same thing, like around 70% or more of all the crops are pollinated completely or partially by animals, by birds, by insects, by bees, by butterflies, by bats. So we basically are losing, the parts of these systems, these ecological systems that are necessary to maintain life on the planet in general and human life in particular. So every time we're losing a species, every time we're losing populations, we're losing the capabilities of the planet or a region to maintain the conditions those conditions have been the ones who gave us such a stable, environment that has allowed us to have the well-being, the development, the culture, everything that is positive for humanity in the last 1,000 years. And we're destroying it. So basically, why do you say it is like if you go to the doctor and the doctor says, if you keep on drinking or you can keep using drugs, you are going to die tomorrow. And you say, well, I don't think so.
Yeah.
So basically, that's the scale of the problem. So on the one hand, we're losing thousands of times faster species of everything, microbes, animals, plants, fungi, than in the last millions of years. And second, the consequences of losing that is affecting hardly the systems, ecological systems that provide us with these ecosystem services. And there is no way we can continue with the well-being and the stability of civilization if we continue destroying those animals and those plants. And the bad news is that we don't have much time. Literally, at this rate, many of my colleagues working on other issues in ecology and tipping points and so on and us, we think that we don't have more than 20 Or put it in a different way, what happened in the next 20 years will define what survives in the planet in terms of the wild animals and plants, and what's the fate of civilization.
Wow.
Because if you think that we're destroying the basic things that keep us alive, eventually there will be a collapse of civilization. That's a
Yeah.
big risk of losing all these species. And people say, come on, Gerardo, that sounds too big, too strong. Well, what's happened with the 2 billion people who don't have water already, drinking water? They're in a collapse. What's happened with the people who don't have enough food? What happened with the people who, in the last few 2 decades, there have been like 150 million ecological refugees. They have to
Right.
move from places because they cannot live anymore. So the crisis is already happening. The collapse is already happening. We have seen how many floods and how many storms and how many horrible things are associated to climate change that is fueled by the loss of biodiversity, and the climate change is fueling the extinction crisis. I mean, they have a positive feedback. The more extinction there are, the more climate change will be. The more climate change will be, the more extinction will be. So at this point and I hope I'm wrong, but I mean, everything is pointing to that direction. Many scientists are, and we do it with all kind of, we want to be very, very cautious about saying it, but the magnitude of the problem is that it may cause a regional or a global collapse of civilization in the few next decades because of the magnitude and the importance, the relevance of what we're losing for the function of the whole planet.
So pretty much like the dinosaurs, the meteor,
Exactly.
like the meteor that came and hit the Earth, is pretty much was happening through ecology, or the ecosystem. It's going to collapse, and it's pretty much that's going to be our
That's
meteor.
exactly right. I mean, we scientists, and what it was important that we entered the sixth mass extinction. We call it sixth mass extinction because in the history of the last 550 million years of the history of the planet, and this is when there were macroscopic animals and plants, things that we can see, and when they left fossils, so we know where they were, and so on. So during those 550 million years,
Right.
we know that the life has been increasing steadily, except for 5 times, where the extinction rates were much higher than the speciation rates, and we call those mass extinction. There has been 5 mass extinction, and those 5 mass extinction are basically, you can define it by 3 things. One is it occurred incredibly rapid in geological terms. But geological, I mean, incredibly rapid is hundreds of thousands of a few million years. This is instantaneous, what is happening now. Second, it was caused by a natural catastrophe, like the asteroid, the
Right.
meteorite, that impact Earth and destroyed all the dinosaurs and everything else. And the last characteristics of mass extinction, that 70% or more of the life on the planet was evaporated in those few thousands or hundreds of thousands of years. So we know what happened. So we also know that after the crisis, life rebound, you know, but it took between 10 to 15, 20 million years to rebound. So we don't have 20 million years. And the other thing is, it's very important. I mean, as a scientist, let me tell you, it gave me a little bit of peace in my mind, knowing that life eventually will rebound in the planet, But what we're talking here right now, what we're talking on
Yeah.
the importance of this crisis and understanding this crisis is, if we continue, there will be incredibly suffering for humanity in the coming decades because of the massive impact of climate change, losing these species, not having enough drinking water, and not having enough food, and so on. All the problems associated of losing the natural parts of the planet.
All right. So, I I'm a big proponent. I'm supporter of space exploration, and they want to colonize Mars. And they said, oh, in case we ever have to, move off our planet. And I was like, well, why are you taking billions, eventually trillions of dollars to colonize a planet that has no way of supporting life? Why don't you put that money into redoing or it's like having a house, instead of going buying a brand new home, why don't you just, fix up your own home that you have now? So I never understood.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah. I never understood that.
It's a stupid idea to colonize Mars.
Yeah.
How many people will be there? 1,000 living in a cage? And then we're 8 billion people, more than 8 billion people. So most of us will die here in the planet. So we'd rather stay here and work together. I'm also a proponent of things. I mean, one of the problems, and you probably have seen, is the cost of conservation, the cost of maintaining the environment, the cost of fighting climate change. It's not a cost. It's an investment.
Yes.
Because you're not using just the money and waste it. I mean, it's an investment that will leave you less money, direct money, than if you invest in oil. But it will give you many other tangible and intangible benefits, and it will give you money back. For instance, protecting forests. If you protect forests and then you do, you can do forestry, or you can do harvesting some animals, or you can do wildlife viewing. There are so many things, so the first important thing is not a cost; it's an investment. So we should be investing in saving our house, as you said. And I put this example. It's like if you have cancer, and you have $1 million in your pockets, and you go to the doctor, and I said, okay, you have, bad news is you have cancer, good news is cancer stage 2, you can be saved, it will cost you $10,000. You say, wow, it's too much.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. So basically, I'm just in mind, we live in an economy that is trillions of dollars every year. If we would put a few $1 billion into the environment, protecting all the natural ecosystems that are still there, recovering species, restoring habitats, having more efficient technologies, more research onto how we can develop things without destroying the environment, and so on, But just basically, we concentrate on conservation, on protecting what we have, and restoring what we can restore. Basically, we are probably with a few $1 billion a year, we will be able to start to make a dent on the problem.
Can this be reversed? Can this be reversed? Or is it kind of just maintaining now?
It cannot be reversed for the species that has become extinct. It cannot reverse for some of the habitats that are completely gone. But yes, definitely. I mean, there are plenty of what really important for the public to know and to understand is that there are many successful conservation stories. I mean, there are many success stories. There are many projects that have shown that you can restore certain things. And it will be very challenging, because now we have climate change on top of us. And but let's say that we can put enough money, and we can put enough money to start to attack and to reduce the main impacts of human activities. I think at least if we could win 2 or 3 decades to the environmental deterioration, I think we will be in better shape to face it. So, on the one hand, there is hope that if we will invest enough, we can start at least to stop and maybe restore part of the problem. The main problem at this moment is that nobody, no country, no international institution is in charge of the problem.
True. Yeah.
So we're putting very little money, and what little money is being put into conservation is because of particular groups, people is interested in doing it.
Right.
But if you think right now, you tell me, like the UN for some things like peace or agreements on trying to diffuse war in some countries or whatever, there is nobody, no institution, no people, no country directing the efforts. So even if now somebody will say, okay, we have here $1 trillion to invest every year to save the planet. Right now, there is no articulation of any group at the scale that it needs to be done. We have the COP, the COP, and we have the COP now coming soon. But it is like I'm cynical in the sense that is okay. We have a meeting where we're going to discuss the problems, and any agreement that there is no way we can really make it happen at the scale, at the national or the global scale, because nobody's in charge and it's not binding. Okay,
Wow.
if no country. All the countries can follow or not voluntarily those agreements, and that's ridiculous in the sense that what we need now is a strong kind of Marshall Plan after the Second World War, but for the planet.
Yeah.
And my hope is humanity has shown great strength during times of very difficult times like Second World War and so on.
Right.
So maybe we're going to wake up soon.
I hope so. I sure hope so. But we have to thank people like you that, are really dedicating your life to, doing these studies and research to give us those warnings that we don't really hear through our leaderships and, and even just our own families. Sometimes they don't, like you said, people just don't want to talk about it because it is too depressing. But Mother Nature, like any mama, if you're messing the house up, eventually she's going to kick your butt out and just say, go get your own place. So, I think the planet will be fine without us. But like you said, without us, I'm sure the world would flourish and the species would continue to grow back. But that being said, can you give us a little bit of hope to finish up our conversation today?
Yeah. As I say, the bison was almost extinct. There were a few hundred left, and now there are thousands. In Mexico, we reintroduced 23 wild bison that were donated by the U.S., and now there are more than 600. And Mexico donate wolves, Mexican wolves to the U.S., and there are now a few hundred around. And we talk about like the tigers were in really bad shape. Less than almost 1,000, a few more. Now there are almost 5,000 rhinos and elephants. In Mexico, we did the first jaguar census in 2010. There were 4,000 animals. We estimate 4,000 animals. In 2018, we did the following census, and we found 4,800. Even though the conditions has deteriorated, in many cases, there were more. And there were more because there was more conscience and more interest from the private industry, the local people, the government. And then we finished in 2024 the third census, and the good news is there are more than 5,000. We don't have exact number, but there are more than 5,000, probably 500 animals and jaguars. So we have all the science and all the technology that we require to make this happen, and this is one. The second thing is like, so we have all the science and the technology that we need to do much better what we are doing. That's number one. The second thing is that plenty of examples of that. Right. The third is like, local people in Mexico, in the U.S., and some private investors and so on have saved millions and millions and millions of acres of forests and tropical forests and so on, and it works. I have a small NGO that we are working with providing income, providing benefits to local people for protecting forests, and now we have more than 500,000 acres
Wow.
and more than 10,000 people, and we're three people. We're three guys, and none of us is rich, and we have been able to put together this gigantic project and that. And the same like us, there are many people that I know all over the place. There are devoted scientists. There are many politicians fighting to get it done. So, and many people, I mean, like people like listening to this podcast are basically interested. They put water or they put plants in their gardens.
Yeah.
So, the hope is like, on the one hand, we should all understand that this is a critical issue that may collapse civilization unless we face it. The second is we can do what we is on our hands, both for the proper person, get involved at the local, at the national level on protecting, fight against protecting the last forest and so on. I mean, become an actor and stop being a spectator,
Right.
And, as a scientist, let me tell you that it's very difficult to be a scientist and a conservationist because usually the universities just, I say, they require that you publish papers and so on. So most of my work on conservation, I don't even use it at the university to be graded because they don't understand that it's important.
Yeah.
But
and
we do it because
they want to have
a
say in it, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So
anyway, so I think I go to bed every night thinking that what we do is relevant for all the people interested in the environment, from your garden to the global. Second, that because of the uncertainties in the future, we should work really hard today. We should take care of ourselves really hard today, and we should enjoy life really hard today.
Well,
there's no more we can do.
For the young people, like I said, your generation, my generation, I'll be 56 this year, 20, 30 years. I'll be definitely up there. But for the young people that are listening to this podcast and on TikTok and YouTube, what message would you leave the younger generations? Because they're inheriting, this beautiful planet. What would you tell them? How to get involved? How would they make a difference in the future?
Well, the first thing I would say to them is not their fault, and it's not. I mean, we shouldn't. I mean, when I say, "Oh, the next generation should solve the problems," I felt really irritated, really bad. Right. It's not their fault. We shouldn't leave it there. We are going to help them. Well, many people of us are helping, trying to help that they inherit something that's better, livable. The second is, if they're interested, this is a great challenge, but they also offers great opportunities. I mean, if you understand what are the issues, if you understand exactly what I said, that is not a cost in investment, and you understand what kind of investment you can restore habitats, and you can produce wealth in terms of knowledge, in terms of money for local people and for the country and so on. It seemed to me that it is very complicated situation, but as such, there is great opportunities, as I said. Right. But also, if I were there, I'm also like you, I'm 60 something already, but I try to enjoy every day. Okay. Still, I mean, my suggestion will be the future is uncertain. They should do their best to try to maintain the planet, at least the way they got it, but it's too beautiful to be depressed and thinking too far away. They shouldn't be to be thinking about 20, 50, 40, 50, 60 years. They should be focusing in shorter term things that can do, and they should enjoy it.
I agree because
if it doesn't last too long, it wouldn't hurt that you enjoy it. And if it lasts longer, it wouldn't hurt that you enjoy it.
Yeah. No, I go up into the mountains and all over this country and world and just amazed by the beautiful world we live in. It's it's stunning.
It's just amazing.
Yeah. And well, thank you so much for being on Truth Be Told and giving us this amazing presentation of what you do and what hopefully people will get involved in. People can go, is this your website, right? Ecolabunum?
Ecolabunam.com. Yes.
Yeah. And
that's one.
can they donate if they want to donate to help with any causes, or how do they get involved?
Yeah, you could have projects where they can help to we're saying, for instance, these places in the forest in Mexico, the jaguar, the bison. Yeah, they can get involved in any ways. And well, thank you very much for I mean, I really appreciate when people like you take time to expose these issues, because that's the only way, that's one way we have to be able to make more people understanding the magnitude, the urgency, but also what we can do to save our planet.
Yes, together we can do it. But thank you, and thank you everybody for tuning in. We really appreciate it. You guys are always amazing of sharing this show, leaving great comments, and just supporting us by just telling a friend. And after almost 16 years of doing this, I still get fascinated and excited. Like people like Dr. Gerardo. But thank you. Please take care of yourself and each other. Again, share the show. We love you. And until next time, I'm Tony Sweet, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.